Switzerland is committed to contribute to a world that is better equipped and resilient for future systemic shocks. With the 2030 agenda, we have the shared blueprint we need for a more inclusive and sustainable recovery. The inputs of all members of society are necessary in order to make sustainable development the most common denominator of our policies. Providing space to civil society organizations, academia, and the private sector will make our sustainable development policies stronger and help shaping resilient societies.
Statistics as a public good benefits users at all levels of society. And as such, a culture of measurement is an essential prerequisite for the production and use of data and statistics. And implicit in a culture of measurement is the recognition that data and statistics have intrinsic value and they are an essential component for the smooth operation of society and the state.
Today's event is a result of an initiative entitled Shaping Resilient Societies, launched by the Universities of Geneva and Zurich in Switzerland, as well as with the formidable support of the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. The initiative contributes substantially to building more resilience and sustainability in response to future pandemic and other transformative events.
The answer is still my country first, perhaps a little bit of trade and development cooperation, whereas the answer of the future should be we need to cooperate in partnership for future shared visions. We cannot continue with sectoral policies trying to tick single boxes. We need to think systemically again. So in terms of resilience, it means we have to enable every country to move forward. And as of now, we cannot grow first and clean up later. It will be too late. And we have to say that we are only resilient if all countries are resilient. And we are one world where we have to find context-specific solutions, but it's our universal challenge to support each other.
What we have realized is that data availability is not the biggest issue. It's often how we use data and that we already have and how we make the case compellingly to the outside world on the evidence base and the fact base that is so important for policy and political decisions. And that's hugely important because data need to be used to provide insight, to have impact, but they obviously need to be informed by integrity.
We talk about the developing of data ecosystem that we have to really respond quickly to ensure the continuity of critical statistical compilation activities and the continuous availability of data to guide government and all sectors of society's emergency mitigation efforts.
We need to be looking at to build resilient societies where public debt is going, where public spending is going. How can the central banks set up the kind of regulatory environment to be able to set the enabling environment to get this resilience right?
What I think it's going to end up, in a way, being very important here is to go from the bird eye view of the world and then countries into the very, very micro view of the individuals. And that's because I think the inequality is not just across countries or across continents or whatnot, but inequality and lack of opportunities and unfairness of access are characterizing individual lives within countries, within regions, within households, across ages. All of this, I think, is going to be incredibly important to understand what is to be resilient.
The solutions that were suggested, there were sometimes global, sometimes national solutions. They were not always adequate. So they ignored the different vulnerabilities, the different adaptive capacities within different parts of societies, even inside countries, inside different regions of the same country. This is why I would like to call for a more integrated risk assessment and management that is not only looking at pandemics, staying within the silo, but also looking at biodiversity losses, and the climate crisis.
We need tools that allow policymakers to feel the public's pulse with a view to their understanding of the crisis, their worries and frustrations, their moral preferences, and their behavioral dispositions. Ideally, these tools can at the same time be used to provide targeted information that allows people to understand the rationale for political decisions. The alternative would be to insist on adherence in a top-down manner, to blame and shame people into compliance, to punish misbehavior, and to trace and cancel dissenting voices. This is hardly a desirable scenario, and whereas it might be effective in the short run, it's unlikely to foster societal resilience.
We're looking at working with the banking sector, where we have some 40% of the global banking industry now looking at principles for sustainable banking, where we have principles for sustainable investment, where we have a large membership of pension funds, insurance players, other investment actors. We're looking with governments who want to look at how can they improve their public spending so that it looks at this whole situation in its totality, not sector by sector. And then we're looking at, where do governments want to set the kind of, let's say, enabling regulatory environment? There is the network for greening the financial system, which central banks have been part of, and where there's some 100 members looking at what does it mean for, the regulatory environments.
20 years ago, you could study mathematics, chemistry, or biology. Today, you have curricula like neuroinformatics, economic chemistry, and in particular to the question that was asked, how do we integrate natural and human systems? Earth system science is an emerging topic you see at many universities. So the experts are being trained. There is not sufficient of them, I would say. So there's a certain urgency that we add more of these interdisciplinary curricula. But it's something that is happening in academia on a very wide basis.
I think we are before the phase where we can actually be working towards scales. I think we are in a very early bottom-up phase where we need to hear what's out there and then try to structure it. And this is why I think the UN could have such a potentially important role in helping us structure this discourse on what important metrics would be in this regard.
It's been very interesting listening to all the presentations, and I have to say that all of them have signaled a growing awareness in the global north of the fact that we all live in the same global space. So we cannot discuss the resilience of one part of the world without also taking into account the rest of the world. COVID-19 is forcing us to reconsider what sustainability and resilience mean for human beings. And it is teaching us that temporary shocks can have long-lasting effects, for instance, on the education of our children. When we're talking about many other challenges that we're facing, but actually at the moment as we speak, millions and millions of children are losing out on education because of the pandemic. And years from now, that problem will affect most parts of the world, if not all of the world. We know from our own experience that resilience in any part of the world, including the global north, must include a commitment to inclusivity and diversity. This means more voices from the global south in discussions like this one.